How do you get people, you think, to disrupt that negative feedback loop in the reticular activating system to switch it over to something positive and wanting to be healed and things like that?
Absolutely. I think even like day one, when people come in, first always listening, making sure they feel really heard, and even in that first day one, just starting to drop some little chiropractic truth bombs and be like, I've seen this before, like, but your body can heal itself. Like, just starting with these little affirmations, and it sounds cheesy, but the affirmations are so powerful because those are the little things feeding into the subconscious. And I think like starting just with those little bits and pieces with our patient education, every time you're holding your adjustment, your body's
Yeah.
change, like that right there, that's changing the reticular activating system. That
Really.
that changes and so that alone, I think trying to use really nurturing like language and letting people know that like they're on track, you're doing the right thing, that's a huge part.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Expect Miracles podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by uccnearme.com. To find an upper cervical chiropractor near you, visit uccnearme.com. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm so excited to have him on. He's such a bright light every time I talk to him, and he's a phenomenal upper cervical doctor, Dr. Theo Berlingeri, out of St. Pete, Florida, and it's the Brain and Body Clinic.
Yeah.
The Brain and Body Clinic out of St. Pete, Florida. Dr. Theo, how are you today? I'm so excited to have you on the show. Not only are we going to be talking some upper cervical, we are going to be talking about the vibration of your thoughts, how it, can dictate your internal thoughts, can dictate your outer reality. The reticular activating system, which is located in the brainstem, which is great for upper cervical care. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Theo. Theo, how are you today?
Hey guys, doing great. So good to be here on the show. I was pumped when you reached out, and I think the cool thing was that it was more like the mind body stuff that we were like, oh, interesting. Like, let's talk about this, right?
It's funny
So
how
I'm
that
doing good.
that's funny how that came up. It wasn't even I didn't even think about it until we were just talking, I think over Instagram. So,
Right.
Theo,
Absolutely.
my question for you starting off is, how did you get into this upper cervical journey? What drew you towards it, and how did that all start?
It's funny. I had been a chiropractic patient since I was like probably 7 or 8 years old. My mom growing up, she had a lot of back issues. There was a point she could barely even walk at one point. So yeah, I was familiar with more traditional chiropractic. He helped her out big time. But when I was in school, I remember like coming across an upper cervical table and seeing this it was an atlas orthogonal table with this big needle-like thing hanging down from the arm. And I was like, what is that? Like, what is this? And so I started looking into just what upper cervical was. And I was amazed when I found that people held their adjustment for months, years, really interesting, complex neuro cases that I think all chiropractors see, but I think a lot of upper cervical chiropractors tend to see more complicated, tough cases. And so I think the big thing for me, I started to listen about how upper cervical is more aimed towards, like, I guess you could say root cause than where some of chiropractic has drifted to. And so I was just drawn to the scientific aspect of it, taking x-rays, seeing pre and post results, having objective findings, knowing when to adjust, when not to adjust. And so the more I learned, the more I couldn't unlearn. And I just kind of took it from there. And I started learning advanced orthogonal. I started coming down to St. Pete in like 2017. And ever since then, upper cervical has just been my primary thing. Halfway through school, I knew, but I remember coming across it and being like, what is this? Like, this is chiropractic? And it just like blew my mind. It was just wild. It was so cool.
And you have some connection into yoga as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's it. It's funny because that's what really started my whole journey into chiropractic, you could say, is because when I got my associates in business, and then I took like a 2-year break volunteering, and it was like at a meditation retreat center out in California, really cool work study program. And I was reading about the yoga philosophy, and this particular type of Tibetan yoga is really about removing blockages from your energy systems, and the body can heal itself, and everything chiropractic talks about. And so as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I started coming across like work philosophy, what chiropractic was about, and I was like, oh, this is lead perfectly into that like yoga mindset of how the body is a self-healing organism, and we're trying to release blockages and make sure the energy's flowing properly at a very basic level. But I thought how beautifully it fit into it. And so for me, it was just a very natural transition to be like, I'm going from a yoga meditation center to a chiropractic school. And so it kind of just one thing led to another, and that's how I found chiropractic philosophy. It just really, really resonated with me.
Amazing. And Theo, let's start talking about that reticular activation system. What is that and why is it so important?
So the reticular activation system is it's one thing I remember it stood out to me most in school. I remember the lecture that my physiology teacher talked about, and he just paused the classroom and he's like, "Oh, there's this really cool thing called your RAS. You ever hear of RAS?" And he pretty much was explaining how it's an area in the brain, it's located in the brainstem, really connected to the limbic system, connected to our amygdala, and it pretty much is our filter for what the brain's going to decide is important or not in our experience. And so this includes, our sensory input, just picking up on everything around us, proprioceptors in the body. So not just thoughts, but that's the main thing. It's all about how what we're thinking, the body it'll also filter that out as well. And so the more we think about something, the more the brain will start paying attention to that specific thing, because it's like you're training your reticular activating system. So I also heard a nice way of it being described as it kind of smooths the information. The reticular activating system smooths the information you're getting from your sensory world and the information you're sending out. So it's very rooted in what we do, and I think it's very interesting how some of the stuff that the reticular activating system manages on the physical level is a lot of what we see our patients like improve with and stuff. And but it's connected to just sensory input, but also how we think. So it's like constantly clocking our internal world. And it's that whole saying how like you create your own reality. And you really do, because the more you focus on this, the more you focus on it, the more you create it, and the more the body focuses on it. And so seeing that all of a sudden you're thinking about a red Jeep, and then all of a sudden you see that red Jeep everywhere you go. So it's the same thing of how your body will just focus on what it finds important. So it's really interesting too how it lives right in the brainstem,
What role does it play in
and
the healing process?
in the healing process. So, the RAS is where we choose what we're going to focus on and what the nervous system
So
chooses to
my
focus
thought
on.
process
So
on there
it,
is you get patients that come in your door and they're like, I'm not looking for any miracles here. I don't know if this is going to work. And the reticular activating system is picking up on that and pinpointing what their outcome already is. And then you get patients that go into the door, they're like, I'm ready to be healed. This has been
yeah,
going on for too long. I'm so open for any type of healing or benefits to come my way. And I could almost tell, and during a consultation, how this person is going to do. Sometimes obviously you get a lot of doubters that are skeptical and still do really well, but there's almost
sure.
like there's some people that almost just don't even want it to work.
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting is like even at a physiological level, right? They're kind of stuck in this training of the reticular activating system, and so they're in that thought process. This isn't going to work. I've tried everything. I'm not expecting a miracle. And then that in turn talks to their limbic body, and their limbic body is connected to all these neuropeptides in the body. And so then they start releasing cortisol and stress hormones, then the inflammation. So it's literally they're fighting themselves. So it's like a negative feedback loop, and that's how that alone puts up a gate, and then they can't heal. And one thing I've done, so in addition to upper cervical, I do a little bit of that neuro emotional technique as well. And it's really interesting because you could just take it as simple as so it's a combination of the muscle testing. If no one's familiar, you use the muscle test as like an indicator if the body's okay with something or not, essentially. And you can have them hold up their arm right away and say, I'm okay healing. And some people go weak, I'm okay getting an upper cervical adjustment, and they go weak. And it's like you find out what this hang up is in their physical body to it. But
What happens when you say when you ask the body if it's ready for an upper cervical adjustment and it goes weak? What's your next step there?
so it's really interesting. It's the combination of there's some neurology in it. There's traditional Chinese medicine and basic psychology. But the idea is, let's say someone holds their arm up and they say, "I'm okay getting upper cervical adjustment." It goes weak, and so then there's these little points right under the hand. They're called your pulse points, and there's ways you can pretty much stimulate all different meridians according to Chinese medicine that tie into an organ and tie into an emotion. So let's say they're saying, I'm okay getting upper cervical adjustment. Their arm keeps going weak, weak. I get to a particular pulse point that makes them go strong. And I'm like, oh, interesting. This leads me to your liver. And it comes up as anger. So where could anger come up with getting an upper cervical adjustment? And then the patient has to sit there and try to put together, where is this anger coming from around maybe getting an upper cervical adjustment? And it could be something as simple as like, well, I've tried so much in the past, I'm going to be really upset if this doesn't work. It could be something as simple as that. So, or it could be something deeper. But it's interesting how the body will absolutely put up a wall, and it's not just a mental wall, but it's really a full physiologic hormone wall that it will put the guard up and keep the inflammation high in the body.
That's so
Um, and it's in even with the net. I apply it to even things like, there's some patients who they come in with like 100% crazy dizziness, and we get them to, there's a few, it doesn't fully resolve, it's like maybe 10%, they'll have occasional flare-ups, but so grateful because they've tried everything and this is massive to them, but even with that little bit left of the symptom, you can get them okay with that, right? Like,
yeah.
so like you hold the arm up and you say, I'm okay even if I have a little bit of dizziness. And then you can like lift the stress around that. And I found that it helps patients with that little 10%. It can like help get that edge off sometimes. So it's interesting how the emotional really ties into the physical. And I think there's a very connected link with our work being right in that same real estate. I don't think it's a coincidence that we get people who do have a lot of emotional stuff or up and down, I think more so than other chiropractors, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the brainstem and the reticular activating system, they're all in that same neighborhood,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
find a lot of people that haven't resolved a lot of past emotional traumas, it does hold up and hang up their healing process.
Right.
And, I sometimes people just need to talk and you'll sit down and talk and that really helps alleviate some of their how they're feeling that day. But sometimes when it's like really heavy emotional stuff, I work with this really good vagus nerve therapist. She like helps those people navigate those symptoms and the emotions tied to it. And I've been sending a couple people to her and it's been working really well.
Yeah.
Some things were a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Right.
It's sure because sometimes you don't have 45 minutes to spend with a patient to talk about that. So I think
It's
it's
true.
important to have some other avenues to help these people heal through a lot of the emotional trauma that's holding up the healing process.
Absolutely. Because then there's also like the emotional trauma that comes with having it in the first place, whether it's severe dizziness or tinnitus or vertigo. And so sometimes it could be stuff that's unprocessed, and then sometimes people are layering it on with all this extra physical, so it's an interesting compounding.
How do you get people, you think, to disrupt that negative feedback loop in the reticular activating system to, switch it over to something positive and wanting to be healed and things like that?
Absolutely. I think even like day one when people come in, first always listening, making sure they feel really heard, and even in that first day one, just starting to drop some little chiropractic truth bombs and be like, I've seen this before, like, but your body can heal itself. Like, just starting with these little affirmations, and it sounds cheesy, but the affirmations are so powerful because those are the little things feeding into the subconscious. And I think like starting just with those little bits and pieces with our patient education, every time you're holding your adjustment, your body's
Yeah.
change. Like that right there, that's changing the reticular activating system. That
Boy.
that changes the every, and so that alone, I think, trying to use really nurturing like language and letting people know
Yeah.
that like they're on track, you're doing the right thing. That's a huge part.
Yeah.
And even when I go over imaging with people, sometimes, I focus and I really make sure they understand the importance of the neck being out of alignment and whatnot. But I never try scare tactics. I
Yeah.
never try to freak people out because boom, that's a whole nother thing
Yeah.
that now they're like, oh my gosh, I have a degeneration here. That means, they're just, and then it gets into the reticular activating
Yeah.
system and it's like that whole thing have you ever had the patient that, they really identify with what they
Of
have,
course. Yeah.
like it's almost,
It's their identity.
yeah, it's all it's their main focus, their life revolves around it. And not to say that, not to not have empathy toward what they're going through, but it's beyond that, having an issue, it's like it becomes
Yeah.
them. I find that sometimes using the NET to break that's a huge breaking point for people. But you could even just do it just with table talk, just working through table talk to break that identity to it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like working out a muscle too, because your
Mm.
body has so many intrusive thoughts per day, and you can take a couple minutes to kind of flip those thoughts into positive energy. But those intrusive thoughts are going to come back, and you almost have to ground yourself when you first start trying to flip your conscious into something positive, like multiple times a day, especially having all those intrusive thoughts for years. It's like working out a
Absolutely.
muscle. You have to ground yourself at
Yeah.
least morning, noon, and night. And getting started, you might have to do it every couple hours or set an alarm on your phone. And
Oh, Pico, yeah.
you've been thinking like that for 15, 20 years. Like
Yeah.
it's not just an easy kind of fit. It's like you got to train your mind to go the other way.
Right, right. It's similar to, doing our checks. I don't do the thermography, but I know it's about trying to like break a pattern, this
Mhm.
chronic
Of
pattern.
course.
It's the same thing. We're trying to break a pattern, and it's difficult because it becomes so ingrained in our belief systems, how we think about ourselves, how we think we should act. And so it's like trying to be fully authentic, and it's hard, but you gotta just, yeah, you commit, and it is like building a muscle, right? You gotta kind of overpower that build up over the years. But similar, like we have our patients, it's like that slow,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's so amazing how that the mind really translates directly to the body stuff. It's
Mhm.
pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And Theo, besides the upper cervical work and people start to better, how do you like to integrate yoga? Or if somebody's into like, can I start doing yoga again? Well, what are the benefits of integrating the yoga and the upper cervical work together?
It's really cool. The yoga is like we talked about, it's kind of like my foundation. So I teach at a studio in town,
Mhm.
and I get to work with a lot of students, some just purely yoga students, but I would say probably a good half of my practice is from just people I know in town with yoga, and they come in and get help. And I will say, just simply doing a yoga practice, something on YouTube, it could be, yoga with Adrian or yoga
Yeah.
with Tim. It could be one of those simple ones. You do it twice or three times a week. That's all you need, and you would be amazed to see how much better you hold your adjustments, how much more mobile you are, how much more emotionally regulated you are.
Hmm.
And it's just fascinating because of the people who come into me from yoga, they have a very regular practice, and it's nothing crazy advanced. It's just like I said, same type of level yoga that you could get on YouTube. And they come in with an issue. They have their upper cervical patient. They heal probably
Dude,
like three times quicker.
I'm not kidding. My yoga patients do so good.
Yeah,
They heal so
yeah,
fast. And usually I'm a little skeptical about like, because people that have a pretty intense yoga practice, they want to go out and do it like right after the adjustment. I try to tell them to hold off for a day or two. Bro,
yeah,
they're like, I just did an inversion headstand and it's all right, let's check your neck. And it's fine.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
I think it really has to do with removing a lot of the energetic blockages and working the entire body and stretching and mindful meditation. You're not kidding,
absolutely.
man. People that do yoga hold their upper cervical adjustments so well.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And I would agree, you try to same thing I try to say, wait a few days and then they come back with a smirk. They're like, well, I did a headstand. And you're like, well, you're holding your
Yeah.
adjustment. It's, yeah, I think it says a lot about how we're, yoga, meditation, chiropractic, upper cervical, neuroemotional technique, any biohacking is all about like trying to create a balanced, healthy autonomic nervous system, respond to our external stimuli properly. And it's like yoga just has been this century old tested way to do that very thing. And so having that self practice, that self regulation, and then adding something like upper cervical, which is just profound for your regulating and balancing your nervous system, I think it just layers on top.
Absolutely.
But it is interesting how yoga specifically over other types of exercise, people just they heal quicker.
They
It's
do, man.
amazing.
It's so funny you
Yeah.
said that. I noticed the same exact thing.
And I will say I went to Palmer in Iowa and I used to go through that mansion all the time because I just thought it was cool. The amount of little Buddhas you see tucked away in
Yeah,
corners and in the tree and up on but they were influenced heavy. I
for
mean,
sure.
there's like a 10-foot Buddha statue in the little garden over there. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Do you do any Bikram yoga, or do you like any hot yoga, or not really? How do
I
you
don't
go?
do Bikram, but I do hot.
Mhm.
So I teach hot. It's a warm. So the most of the classes I teach are like 80s, not anything crazy. But hot to me, like anything over like 87 and 87 plus.
Shoot.
And the one hot class I teach is I ran out and taken my temperature and you're like at 100, your internal heat gets high.
Yeah, man.
The room's like 102. And I would say really hot yoga like that, like the Bikram type where you're drenched, it's 100 degrees. I think maybe like once a week, twice
Mhm.
a week. But I think you gotta be careful not to overdo it
Mhm.
because then you can raise the cortisol too high and you're
Yeah.
almost like creating like a stress response.
Mhm.
So I like warm yoga and I think hot yoga in moderation
Yeah.
just because it can I think you can do the inverse because you're getting hot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really cooking you. So
There's been a couple times I've taken hot yoga where I needed to tap out and go outside because I was going to pass out.
it's too much. Exactly. How do you feel about sauna?
I have like a portable infrared sauna at my house that I try to go in a couple times a week, and I love it. I really love it. Especially just for cortisol levels, like stressful day, and you go in the sauna and I feel like a world better when I get out.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely. I read this study and I had a patient who had she's only in her 40s and she had early onset like dementia
Mm.
coming on and was freaking out and stuff. And I had just read this study and it was like how I think it was like 2 to 3 times a week in the sauna for at least 20 minutes is like it cuts your chances of developing like Alzheimer's like 50% or something.
Wow,
And she literally went out and she saw this and she like bought one. She's like, I saw that study, I'm buying one. She bought it.
amazing.
And that's like interesting, it's like brain health is everything. I'm sure you get so many people who are just like kind of trying to optimize their brain health. It's like I feel like it's become such a huge thing, the neurology, all
Mhm.
that.
Of course. Yeah, there's so many different routes and social media content. There's like a new and the cold plunges and the saunas, and it's like almost overwhelming these days.
Yes. It's St. Pete too, we're known for having all of these crazy there was no one doing the cold plunge, and then there was one place, and now there's like 7 places in St. Pete who go do cold plunge. There's the infrared studios. There's a lot. So it's cool because people are more health conscious around here. But I would say you're almost up against all of these like really big deal like biohacking like membership programs that are out there now and stuff. And I think it can all bring everyone up. But I'm like, man, go get that upper neck adjusted because
Yeah.
it'll make your red light session even that much more. You know,
Do you do anything to block like EMF radiation or frequency?
I it's funny. was always curious. I was like, I don't know, like I never wasn't, I did not believe it with the little, the things you
Showing
put
up
on your
and all that.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so probably 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I was like, I'm gonna get one. I got the little, it's a website online, and it's pretty well, people, they have all these peer reviews. Some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. Like, oh, just try it. And I got that, and then I also put a shungite sticker on my phone. It's like
Yeah.
this
I
big,
got one of those too.
and I don't know about you, but I will say, like, I started randomly getting like a lot quicker, better sleeps,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt less stressed. Like, not that I was super stressed, but I just, no undercurrent of like anxiety, or
Mm-hmm.
like seems to be waking up better. And
Yeah.
then I was kind of thinking to myself, I was like, what have I done different? I'm feeling really good lately. I'm
Yeah.
like, all I got was that thing.
What do
That
you,
one
besides your
sticker.
phone, where do you put the other one?
So I have the one I bought online from the company on the back of my phone, and then I have the shungite on the back of my
So
phone too.
it's okay. So you don't have anything on your
So I got
body.
no, I put it both right on the phone,
Yeah.
and I think there's something to it. I will say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised, but yeah, I mean, I got my earbuds in
Yeah.
there, so it's
I
like,
think about that all the time. I don't take, I'm like, I'm going to the gym. I'm just cooking my brain right now, but it makes
you know,
that so much better.
you know, and they even, they're gonna stop trying to let kids use the phones in classroom and stuff, because I mean, I think they've known for years, but now it's becoming more. Maybe it's not the best to have these things right up next to us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I think I felt a little better from that blocking device. And it makes sense, we're being bombarded. And it comes all the way down to back to what we were talking to, is our emotions or frequency.
Yeah.
They can literally measure how different emotions or shame has one of the harshest frequencies for your body, and it's the most destructive
Mm-hmm.
physiologically.
Yeah.
Shame is, and so it's like, well, if an emotion can carry a frequency and that affects our body, there is some sort of measurable frequency coming off the phone, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's got to interfere with our system in some way. Because so, I always tell patients, I like to imagine your spine, it's almost like a guitar, because it's truly like we're just like a guitar. We have a frequency,
Mm-hmm.
and every time we do a little adjustment, maybe it's an upper cervical, maybe it's something in the spine. It's like we're just tuning up that guitar,
For sure.
making it sound the best.
I agree.
Because then it also kind of answers the whole question of like, well, why am I out of adjustment? It's like,
Yeah.
it's just life.
It,
The guitar needs to get tuned up sometimes.
yeah.
It's nothing you did wrong.
Yeah. There's been times where I've physically done something to lose the adjustment, and then there's been times where I'll wake up and I'm just feeling off, and then as the day goes on, I'm like, is my neck out? Like I feel awful today, and I get it checked, and sure enough, it's out, and it really didn't do too much, and that could
Right.
be some emotional stuff going on, stress. It's
Right.
it's not always a physical trauma that knocks you out of alignment.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I find that for myself too. Just like you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, there was a lot going on that weekend. Wow. Because that's my first thing I'll ask people is like, did you bump your head? Did you do anything new or different? And then I'm like, have you had a lot going on? Are you stressed? I think that's our natural question as chiropractors.
And then it gets really complicated when the healing starts and there's a flare up and they're having their old symptoms, but they're actually in alignment. So you got to be, that's why I love upper cervical. There's certain tests and measures that even if the person's not symptomatically feeling great, it could be a healing cycle. It could be pulling and not completely out, and it can pull itself
Sure.
in. That's why I love upper cervical, because we're you pretty much doing everything we can not to ruin the adjustment or not to over adjust.
Exactly. And that's what drew me big time in school, because in clinic with full spine, there was some Thompson like checks, this and that, but it was never as clear to like know when I adjust, when I don't adjust. Did that
Mhm.
person need their whole nervous system like completely like influenced in such an impactful way? Did they even need their neck
Yeah.
off to the right, or should it have been left? I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't tell.
I don't know.
Can't sleep at night.
I don't know how some chiropractors do it that don't have any systems in place where a body just lays down on the table and they're just
Yeah.
this is what we're gonna do. Like, if there's a lot of great chiropractic techniques where the body shows you
Right.
exactly what it needs, and I love that
Right.
because I'm not doing any.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you want to chat about it on here, but what about the? I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. I don't know if you saw it posted in the upper circle of the Facebook
Oh,
group.
I think I know.
The self adjusting.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the upper cervical post. There's a Facebook page on for all the upper cervical doctors in the world are on it, and there was a doctor that posted the bald head and the skin folds, and it's like, what's the listing? Do you remember that one?
No, I didn't see that. That's cool.
Oh, which the self adjusting?
Okay, so it's in the group. It's in the Upper Circle Club Facebook, and so this guy is 3D printing your customized. It's like an AO table, but he's just selling like the headpiece, and then it's like he's selling like something that does the adjustment, and it's like supposedly you go and get. I don't know the background, but supposedly you get an image once, and then based off your listing, he makes your listing for you, and then you get sent this customized pillow that your partner or whoever is with you, they hold the instrument to adjust, and it's all customized to like your listing, and you just like lay on it, and like you just
Well,
it's
let's.
like it's like an at-home upper circle, and I was like, how could he,
I
I don't know
I
about that.
love
That's
the idea, but there's
right.
no way most people don't know when to give that adjustment or not. And it's probably going to, because if something works really well once and, the next day somebody's like, I really need that, I need that, and they do it again, how many times are these people going to be adjusting? Adjusting?
Yeah, well, also, it's like, how do you know when to adjust?
That can cause,
And like,
that can
are you even aiming at C1, or are you aiming at C2?
that's a
Like,
big problem.
it's very scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone was kind of freaking out and commenting on it, but you'll have to. I'll text you the picture of this device. I mean, it's interesting,
Very
but
interesting. Just
unless maybe it's so gentle and light that it's just you'd have to do like 100 adjustments to get a full
yeah.
floor. You know what I mean?
If
Like,
that was for you or me, I'd feel pretty good about it because that has
right.
knowledge and the knowing when to adjust and when to not. But I can see people doing that several times a day.
I know, right.
That's scary.
Yeah. It's freaky. I'm curious to see how it I'm curious to see if there's any updates on it.
I didn't see that. I'm gonna definitely go to that post after this and check.
Yeah.
So were people going nuts on it?
Yeah, there's some people like, not happy. There's some people thinking like it's a joke, it's not going to go anywhere, but it could. Who knows if it goes somewhere? The problem is the only thing would be if someone gets hurt on it,
Yeah, for sure.
then that's their basis to look at chiropractors and be like, well, look at them. Look what
Yeah,
they're doing. They're selling these devices. Then we
yeah,
look bad because someone's out there doing. And so
yeah.
I think that's the major downfall of it is if it hurts someone and then
Yeah.
we get bad.
Somebody at a conference once told like had an idea where they were like, one day in the future, we're gonna be able to walk into a booth. The booth is gonna scan your nervous system, and they'll just do little pinpoint adjustments where you need it, and then you're good. I mean, I thought that was awesome, but
It's kind of like that coming to life in a way.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
right now, I would say I am not a fan of that what you just brought up, but
Yeah,
we're living in a crazy world, so who knows?
it's true. I think I might be one of the last people trained in all forms of imaging. Did you get film at Palmer
Uh,
at all, or
to
life
LA,
at life?
I went to LACC, which is
Oh,
not a philosophical chiropractic school.
okay.
We had a lot of radiology classes, but we
Okay.
weren't taking any X-rays in the clinic.
Okay. Well, is LA like LA's California? Where is?
Yeah, it's called
Oh, wow.
called Southern California Year.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, it's in
Got it.
Whittier, California.
Cool.
Real
Basically, cool.
Oh, dude, that's why I went. I was in
Yeah.
Huntington Beach for 2 years, 3 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was like living on the beach, surfing every day, going to chiropractic school. It was a.
Because you already knew you were gonna go upper cervical, right?
I found upper cervical in my first term at chiropractic school. And
Oh,
it was life changing. So I kind of had it throughout my entire chiropractic curriculum. Thank God.
so you already had your
Yeah.
track.
Going
Could have gone to any school.
going in, I didn't know about it, but 3 months into school, I found it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. At Palmer, we had we still had like processors for the film X-rays, and like we had to like I worked up my toggle films on like
Yeah.
film paper, and then they had this the digital plates, digital X-ray. I've gotten some cone beam, so I'm like, it's just so crazy to see the progression just like right there, and just because they phased out the film X-rays. I think I was like the last class, and then but cone beam just blows my mind. I see your videos, and
Yeah.
I've worked with it some. It's amazing.
I had my first, the woman I bought my practice from in New Jersey had plain film when I started, and it was
Wow.
like it was such a process. I remember because you have to be pitch dark room, completely shut.
So you did that?
I
Yeah, yeah,
did that.
yeah.
And one time I'm taking x-rays on a person and it was like a busy day and like I opened the door and the cassette was open and all the x-rays, if there's a little bit of light, just get completely wiped out. So I just spent 30 minutes taking x-rays on this person. I just wasn't thinking open the
Yeah.
door and all the x-rays are ruined. I'm like, oh my
Holy
God.
moly.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, it's that one. That's the cone beam. I went for I now I take x-rays in 14 seconds and that was like a 45-minute process. Just take
Yeah.
it's crazy how
It's
much it's gone.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's such a bottleneck for how many people we can serve.
Oh yeah.
And for that to be lifted for our profession is wild. I mean, that's wild. 40 minutes to 14 seconds.
Yeah. It
That's so many more people we can help. I
it's
mean, that's
insane.
crazy.
Yeah, especially when you have like a couple or like a family that comes in, you can just boom, 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 all done. All you got to do is analyze them. And I think
Absolutely.
it did deter a lot of students from doing the work. Like,
Yeah.
they'll
Oh, yeah.
spend 45 minutes.
That's a great point.
Everybody just wants to, get the neck, get it adjusted, and be on their way. Like, you're telling me I have to take X-rays for 45 minutes and then
That's a really good
another
point.
hour analyzing them. I think that deterred a lot of people from upper cervical, where the cone,
Absolutely.
press a button, it's done. I think a lot of people are going to be going towards the upper cervical work now.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, to take the X-rays, and especially, even once you know how to do them correctly, it's the end of the day, you have 40 minutes, and it's just like, it's tough. You
Yeah.
gotta be really just on your game. The cone beam, you just go, pop, and you put it on.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. So, Theo, we are running out of time here at the
All right,
end.
brother.
At the end of all my episodes, I like to ask all my guests, one piece of advice that has really resonated with you over the years that you would like to give the audience. Could be absolutely anything.
I would say my best piece of advice I ever got was, it sounds cheesy, it sounds like so cliche, but it's to listen to your gut, to listen
Yeah.
to your intuition. There's times I didn't listen to my gut intuition. You walk up to a situation or a person, whatever it is, and your body is picking up on the frequency, it understands, and it's that gut.
That's
And
yeah.
and so I think hearing that the first time, being like, what does that mean? And then slowly feeling and understanding, oh, it's like, listen to your body, listen to how your body feels, to whatever you're contemplating or getting involved in, because the body will never lie. And it can't lie,
I love that. My mom used to always say, "Listen to your belly barometer." Like, always to be so right.
Yeah,
Like, listen to it.
exactly. Yep. And having it explained in that way makes you realize how powerful you are in terms of picking up on what's right for you, what's wrong for you.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And Dr. Theo, where can people find you online, social media, website, if they want to make an appointment?
So all my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you can find me at Dr. Theo Berlingeri. So just simple as that, all my tags. And then my website is drtheochiropractic.com. And always feel free to reach out any of those mediums.
Love that. Theo, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your story. Really enjoyed this conversation and look forward to having you back on anytime, my friend.
Absolutely. So good to be here. Thanks, Dr. Kevin.
Awesome.